All right, everybody, the boys are back. It's time to get after it. All sorts of crazy shit has been going on out here. Trump. Let's start with Trump's Easter tweet, baby. That's all. I think that's what we got to do. We got a lot to catch up on. But let's start right here with this tweet. Donald Trump starts off Easter morning with a Truth Social post that goes like this. Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one. In Iran, there will be nothing like it. Open the fucking strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah, President Donald J. Trump. So what the fuck, number one? I have never seen a tweet like that come rolling in from the president of the United States. Not even a president as much of a wild card as Trump. But how does a president say something like that on Easter? And then the lots being made of the Allah thing. I think it's kind of a joke. I hope it's a joke, honestly. That may be a little bit of wishful thinking. But I think what the point Donald Trump is making here is, well, with the praise be to Allah thing, is he's kind of making fun of him. Like, you know, it's Easter. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to threaten the shit out of you. I'm going to cuss at you. I'm going to tell you you're going to live in hell. And then he slides in there. Yeah, praise be to Allah. Like, yeah, pray to your God that your life's going to get better, because here in the West, we're going to come and we're going to fuck you up. I think that's what he meant. I think the praise to Allah thing's a joke. A lot's being made of it that that the president's praising Allah on Easter. I don't think that's what it was. I don't think Donald Trump honestly wanted to sit there and praise Allah. I think it's a little bit of a prod towards the Muslims that live there in Iran and, the theocracy there, that their God didn't save their leader. He's not saving the people there, and the Christian West is coming to fuck them up. That's my read on it. Donald Trump doesn't strike me as much of a guy to honestly be out here saying, praise to Allah. He's never said that in a non-batshit crazy tweet. I would think if Donald Trump wasn't a teetotaler, I would tell you he had to have been hammered during this. Like, if the Nixon administration had Twitter and something came out of it like this, I'd be like, oh yeah, the president's drunk, man. He's out there. Had a few too many. He hasn't gone to bed yet, partying from a Saturday night. And this is the kind of shit that happens when you tweet drunk. But Donald Trump doesn't drink. He doesn't do drugs, but he's crazy anyways. So let's back up a little bit. There's something a little charming about when a president really cusses. Like that video back when Donald Trump is, about to get on the helicopter. And he says, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. That felt organic. It felt real. It didn't feel scripted. He really kind of cusses in a way that, you're like, okay, that guy dropped some F-bombs in his life. But when it's in a tweet coming from the president, or it just feels rehearsed, and he says fucking, F-U-C-K-I-N apostrophe. Like, it just feels too weird. It feels too formal. It feels rehearsed. I don't like it. Presidents, every once in a while, cussing towards a reporter, okay, feels organic. Don't put it in a tweet, man. That doesn't feel quite right. And then you get to the whole part about, bombing the power plants. I know we're working backwards in this tweet, but you're bombing power plants and bridges. Like, okay, he's not even making the case that, like, this is a power plant that's, we're only going to bomb the power plants that are, powering their nuclear reactors. Or we're bombing the power plants that power their anti-air defenses. Nope, it's just we're going to bomb the power plants that, normal ass people are using. We're not going to blow up the bridges between military bases because we're inserting an army and we want to use this river as a defensive barrier. Nope. It's just, people built a bridge. Fuck them. We'll take a missile to that bridge just to fuck their shit up because we can. That seems to be what this whole tweet was about. Now, the whole thing could have been just bluster. I don't know. I don't see how Donald Trump would have backed down. We know now because it's the night of April 8th that Donald Trump doesn't end up following through on this, that he ends up getting some kind of ceasefire, not attached to much else. Again, we're going to stop talking about that tweet too much now because, again, it ended up being inconsequential. A deal ends up getting struck. And Iran, so here's what's been going on. Iran has allowed other countries, their friends, to move the ships through the strait, and they've been charging a toll. It's been said it's $2 million if you want to bring a cargo ship through the strait. But now the strait's open again. There was a lot of talk on Twitter about the $2 million was still being charged. I haven't been able to find anything about this deal still allowing Iran to charge a toll. It seems like the strait is being opened for real. Iran wants sanctions lifted, and they want U.S. troops out of the region. They want to continue enriching uranium. Trump doesn't want to do any of those things. Trump hasn't agreed to any of those things except for stopping the strikes for 2 weeks. Again, there was a lot on Twitter about Trump, lifting sanctions now, and he's pulling troops out, and he's going to allow them to continue enriching uranium. None of that's true. Only thing he's agreed to is stopping the strikes. And so then, here was something interesting. It seems like Israel was cut out of the negotiations, that the United States was negotiating with Iran through Pakistan. And some people were mad about that. Some people that, not really, real Americans, these are people that care about a foreign country more than our own. And you can, maybe guess which foreign country that is. Let's go to our, and we're not going to point out anybody specific. We're going to go to an anonymous Twitter page here that goes under the tag Mark R. Levin, which is obviously a pseudonym of some kind. And what this bot account, or a lot of followers, but this anonymous person said, they quote tweet the Wall Street Journal, which says, Israel, shocker if you didn't guess that was the country I was referring to, Israel, which wasn't formally a part of the Iran negotiations, wasn't happy that it got word a deal was finalized at a late stage and wasn't consulted, according to mediators and a person familiar with the matter. Israel's mad because they didn't get to be a part of the negotiations. Now, of course, we're their baby daddy, and we're the ones spending $40 billion, and we're the ones that paid them $26 billion to flatten Gaza and all those things. Okay, we gave them the bunker buster, or we used the bunker busters and the B-2s during the 12 Days War. We're the ones fighting this war. But for some reason, Israel's mad they weren't consulted, despite them being our client state and having no rights to negotiate on a war that we're the ones leading anyways. But okay, fine. They're upset. They're the ones with all the Epstein files, so they get to be upset about this kind of thing. They say they're mad, and this account, this Mark R. Levin account, says, who's the point man on the negotiations? Who cut out our ally? Who has fought by our side, unlike most NATO countries? So he's taking the side of Israel here. Shocker. The United States conducted these negotiations. Why would someone, an American actually, be mad that we are unilaterally conducting these negotiations? Why would he want a foreign country to have a say? A foreign country with different interests from ours. no less. And then he has to throw this shot in here of, they cut out our ally who has fought by our side, unlike most NATO countries. And that's probably because, again, most NATO countries also are welfare baby mamas, didn't want to get involved in a war in Iran for good reason, because their energy is already expensive because they're retarded. But they didn't want their boys dying for Israel. They didn't want their military, all their stockpiles of weapons, which they're all mostly sending to Ukraine anyways. But at least that war is happening in Europe. If you're a European country, you can kind of see why you would be invested in this war in Ukraine. You don't really want to fight this war in Iran. How does Germany benefit from going to war in Iran? And NATO countries aren't required to help in offensive wars. NATO is a defensive pact. They are not obligated at all to join in on our beating up on the Ayatollahs and the Iranian people. Not required to do so. But this account and a lot of people who put a certain other country first really want to make sure Israel's involved in these negotiations for some reason. We'll leave that up to your speculation as to why some of these people would be so interested in making sure Israel gets their say here. Again, despite being an American and us paying for the war and all the wars in the Middle East. Okay, fine. So now a negotiation is going to take place. And Donald Trump, it seems like the main point he's going to go for here is no more uranium enrichment. His administration's been all over the place selling this war, but it seems like the thing they've really settled on now and started to really coalesce behind is this whole idea that Iran can have zero uranium enrichment, no civilian energy program, definitely not enriching anything past, I think it's 3% is what civilian energy grade uranium is. No more of that. Okay, fine. That's the main thing Donald Trump's pretending to want. We all know what they really want. They want to completely collapse Iran's influence in the region so that Israel can dominate the Middle East, but fine. Okay, Donald Trump, when he is talking to the Iranians, is going to say no more uranium enrichment. And he's going to want the Atomic Agency observers to come in and verify that there is no uranium enrichment. He wants the Strait of Hormuz back open, no tolls, which the Strait of Hormuz was already open before this war started. And we're just trying to get back to the status quo there because that's one of the only things Iran can do. Like they don't have a big enough military to like march across the Middle East and threaten Israel. They can't touch the United States. So they have to play the few cards they have, which is bombing these ships out in the Strait of Hormuz, shutting down all the oil that flows through there. 20% of the world's oil flows through there. So that's the only card they have to play. So they're going to play it. They can keep manufacturing $300 drones that threaten these oil tankers, these $100 million oil tankers, and effectively shut the place down. So Donald Trump wants that to end. And then he also wants no more funding of the terrorists across the region, which Iran definitely does. They fund the Houthis, they fund Hezbollah, they fund Hamas, they fund Al-Shabaab. They've got, which is obviously in Africa, not the Middle East, but still they fund terrorism all over. And Trump wants them to stop. The big poison pill here seems to be the uranium enrichment. Donald Trump knows that's something that is at the top of the Iranians' list to not give up. And here's why. Every country that has given up their nuclear programs in the past in the Middle East that have been enemies of Israel, the leaders end up all getting murdered and there's a regime change. Libya being the number one example. Gaddafi gives up his weapons program and he ends up being sodomized to death on YouTube. You can still go look that video up if you care to. If you've got a strong stomach and you're into that kind of shit, you can go find it. You can also go back and see Saddam Hussein being hung after he gave up his weapons programs despite the U.S. selling him the chemical weapons. He gives them up. What do you know? U.S. essentially tries to frame him for 9/11. He had nothing to do with 9/11. We go in there anyways, and he ends up at the gallows getting hung. Now, had he kept all his weapons, might have been another story. So there, and then you look at the other side, North Korea. They break out, get to a bomb, bam. U.S. doesn't do anything to them anymore. The U.S. can't do anything. They have nukes. They could kill millions of friendlies, and they could kill a lot of U.S. soldiers if the U.S. tried anything funky in North Korea. So the incentive structure is pretty clear. Iran wants to, if they didn't want to get to a bomb before, they sure do now. They have real incentive to. They have the enriched uranium stockpiled, and they could try and break out and get to a bomb. Because there's no reason, what is Trump going to say? I'll attack you even harder or something if you don't comply? We've already destroyed a ton of Iran shit. And, yes, we could go harder, and it does seem like they want, to make a deal on some level. But I think that this is the poison pill. I don't think they're going to give up their uranium enrichment, because once they do, and they have no uranium enrichment capacity at all, I think that's when Israel is going to go in and really topple the government, send in lots of weapons to the rebels there. That I just don't think Iran's going to give that up again. And so here's what Iran wants. Here's the other side of the negotiation. The first thing they want is they want the attacks to stop. They want their leaders to stop being killed. They don't want their power plants being blown up or their bridges, anything like that. Their navy's already been destroyed, but they just want the attacks to stop. That's number one. Second thing they want, continue uranium enrichment. They don't want to give up their program. Third on their list is they want Israel to stop invading Lebanon, which is also going on in the background. I think Israel now occupies 14% of Lebanon using the attacks from Hezbollah's justification, despite Hezbollah losing a lot of power. And that was the famous pager attack that took out all Hezbollah's leadership. That terrorist organization is at least partially crippled. And Lebanon, the Lebanese government seems to be pulling a lot of support from them, and Israel is taking this opportunity of the strife between Hezbollah and the Lebanese government to move in, and looks like they're going to try and annex southern Lebanon. They don't seem like they're going to give any of that land back. A lot of the Lebanese Muslims are fleeing the area, and it seems like Israel's just going to take it, and that's going to be greater Israel now. So Iran wants that to stop, which Israel's not going to. Another poison pill. And actually, Iran's threatening to break the ceasefire over it, the 2-week ceasefire they agreed to, which may happen. I don't know. By the time this thing airs, the war could be back on. We'll see. Then they want the sanctions lifted. Now, they've had sanctions on them since George W. Bush. Nothing new to them, but it does really hurt their economy. And they want to continue funding terrorism because fundamentally they think that Israel does not have a right to exist. They want to wipe it off the face of the earth. So they're going to continue funding terrorism that continues to push those aims. They're not going to stop doing that. So it seems like we've got a long ways to go in this negotiation. Okay. I'm not confident that they'll come to an agreement. I think Donald Trump is going to end up dropping more bombs on Iran before this whole thing ends. But one of these days, it is going to end. I don't think this is it. I don't think this ceasefire is going to hold, or at least it will expire and we'll be back at it. But eventually, this is what the outcome is going to be. And I'm like 60% confident in this. So super confident. The war will end, number one. The Strait of Hormuz will be open again. We've had, I think it's 110 years of American naval precedent where we're going to go in and we're going to enforce international law saying, hey, these straits, they're international waters. Anybody can go through them, no charging tolls. We're going to get the Strait of Hormuz back open again. There's not going to be a permanent toll there. Iran's going to get a civilian nuclear program overseen by international observers, 3% enrichment. And I think this is going to be the toughest point again, because Donald Trump, this is where if there is going to be a poison pill put in these negotiations, this is going to be it. Donald Trump will say 0%, they'll say 3%, and the war will continue until someone gives. And I think Donald Trump will be the one to give. I think he'll eventually allow them a civilian nuclear program when he's ready and Israel's ready to end this war. Some of the sanctions will be removed. Israel's not going to stop invading Lebanon, and Iran is not going to stop funding terrorism. So essentially, we're going to return to the status quo. Now, Iran was bound by the JCPOA that was signed under Obama. That was the pallets of cash in the middle of the night. Not a great deal, but it was something. And Trump pulled us out of that. And then that's when Iran started upping their enrichment, because since we weren't a part of the nuclear deal anymore, Iran kicked out all the observers and said, fine, we're going to start enriching our uranium even higher, up to weapons grade. So Trump, that's what kind of led up to this war. Going on Trump pulling us out of the JCPOA. And so the status quo just started getting worse and worse and worse. And it seems like after this war ends, we're not going to be in a much better place. We might end up with a deal similar to the JCPOA, where there's independent observers coming in again, and we, can see that they're not breaking out to a weapon, but they're still going to be enriching uranium. They're still going to be funding terrorism. Ironically, they're still going to have an Ayatollah Khomeini who is younger and a lot more pissed off. I mean, his father was killed in the airstrike, and I believe his brother or sister was killed as well, and then his niece were all killed in these airstrikes that killed Khomeini. And this pretty common thought, it seems like it should be obvious. If you're going to take a ruling family like the Khomeinis, and you're going to kill a big chunk of them, you can't leave any alive left in power. Because there's now a blood feud. Not that there wasn't before, but it's going to be much more intense since we killed a ton of this guy's family. And his life is just going to be devoted to killing Israelis and killing Americans now, even more than it was before. Because, it seems kind of obvious. You kill someone's family, that's not something they're going to forget. And the Iranians view this as a war of aggression. The United States and Israel has a much better case to launching this war in defense than the U.S. does, but that's how they see it. They see us as the little Satan, and Israel's the great Satan. They want to wipe us both off the face of the earth. The death to America, all that stuff, that's nothing compared to what we're gonna see. The vengeance this guy is gonna be out for. It's going to make any deal really difficult between Israel and Iran. It's going to make it something really difficult between the United States and Iran. They're going to be our enemy for a lot longer. That's my prediction. That's one of the costs of this whole war. Again, we're just trying to return to the status quo. We just want the strait back open, which it already was before the war. We just want them to stop enriching to, I would say we should just stop them from going to weapons grade. Trump says not at all. They already were that way before this war started. Under the JCPOA, they were not enriching past anything that you would need for a civilian program. We're sanctioning them, of course, which isn't good, but our sanctions were working. We really were devastating their economy, and we're not going to get them to stop funding terrorism. So what did we have to gain here? It seems like the U.S. got nothing out of this. The best we're going to hope for is a return to the status quo. And what we got in exchange, over a dozen Americans are killed. I think we're up to 15 Americans killed. hundreds wounded. We spent $40 billion on this military action that's moving the strike groups. That's the bombs and missiles we've used, the defense weapons we've used, aircrafts we've had destroyed, our bases that have been damaged in retaliatory attacks. Something that's not talked about enough is the Iranian civilians that have been killed. There's like 160 little girls were killed when a school was hit, which again takes a huge toll on our moral standing in the world. How do we get to sit here and say, you know, they're the terrorists, they're evil, when we're blowing up little girls' elementary schools? The U.S.'s global stature has taken a huge blow. I would say that most people assumed the U.S. could topple this regime in Iran if we had wanted to. But now it's pretty clear we're not. Trump's even said now, yeah, we're leaving the regime in place. And there's no doubt that if our entire military was brought to bear, like a World War II style invasion, we could topple the regime. But the world now sees the U.S. people just don't support these foreign wars. And that was one of Sun Tzu's pillars of victory, right? One of the 5 big ones. You have to have the consent of the sovereign. That's why we lost Vietnam. The people weren't behind it anymore. And the people are definitely not behind this war. So, huge swaths of Americans already disagree with this war. It's the most unpopular war 30 days in that this country's ever had on record. No war has been less popular at this point than this one. And Trump sees that. That's why he's trying to end it quickly. Trump, if anything, does have this kind of instinct for the market response. He can kind of feel that things are going poorly and people want it to end, and he wants that to happen as well. The world just sees how tired we are of being an empire. We're $40 trillion in debt. We're sick and tired of wars in the Middle East, and I think all of our enemies see that. We're sick and tired of funding the war in Ukraine. We don't want any more of this. The people don't want any more of this. And that wasn't quite that obvious 2 months ago, especially after the Maduro raid. It kind of seemed like Trump was on a roll. And now it seems like it's clear where the American people stand. We don't want any more of these wars. And if I'm a foreign adversary, I'm looking at that saying, okay, it's clear the American people don't want this, but Donald Trump's a wild card. So give it 3 more years. Donald Trump will be gone. We will inevitably have a less of a loose cannon president in 2028, 2029 when they actually take office. We'll have less of a loose cannon for sure. So you couple that more conservative approach president that we will inevitably get. It doesn't matter which party wins. That's what we're going to get. Couple that with an American people who are sick and tired of wars. Our foreign adversaries are going to be making some moves after Donald Trump leaves office, because it's just exposed how much the American people are sick and tired of defending the rest of the world. And then the biggest political cost is the right is even more fractured than it's ever been. Tucker Carlson was going directly at Donald Trump. Tucker Carlson kind of implied Trump was the Antichrist, man. He was talking about how on Donald Trump's inauguration day, Donald Trump wouldn't put his hand on the Bible when being sworn in. And Tucker has tried to not burn the bridge with Trump. He's tried to still have access to him, be the guy in his ear. That seems completely gone. Tucker went after him for his New Year's tweets, for him getting into this war, betraying his base. Again, Tucker took the praise to Allah thing literally, which I don't think it was. I think it was actually a shot at Islam, but it was quite the thing. The right is more fractured today than it's been in a very long time. And it really pisses me off, because Trump has given the populist energy right back to the left. It used to be in 2024, all the populists, and all the way back to 2016, 2015, we talked about this. Trump harnessed the populist energy. He was the guy that was taking the 80 side of every 80-20 issue. He was the one that wanted to build the wall. He was the one that wanted to end all the trans crap. He was the one that wanted to end DEI. He's the one that said no more foreign wars. And his first term, he lived that out. He was the only president this millennium that didn't start a new war. So we had all this populist energy, and then Trump goes out and he does this. And he starts this war with Iran. And now it's the Democrats that can say, oh yeah, this war's a terrible thing. The left now is able to take the 80 side of this 80-20 issue. People not wanting this war, the 80% of Americans. And all that energy, there seems to be this momentum shift going on right now. Whichever party can harness the populist energy in this country is going to be the winner for the foreseeable future. And the first several rounds went to Donald Trump. He was the one just gobbling up all of this energy. Bernie Sanders tried to as well. Again, he was railroaded. We've covered that on here many times. But the deep state that apparently has Trump's ear, those that are defending the Iran war, the like Fox News type people, the CIA, the defense industry, all those people with Trump's ear, they're the ones really dividing the right here. It's not you again go back to that anonymous Twitter account going under the name of Mark R. Levin. That person would try and tell you, no, it's the podcasters, the doomers, the panicans. Those are the people dividing the right. It's the Tucker Carlsons and the Megyn Kellys and Candace Owens. It's their fault because they won't get on board with the MAGA agenda. But that's not true. The populists, all those that I just named, they're the ones in the majority. They're the ones that the 80% of Americans are agreeing with. And it's Donald Trump that is the one that's siding with the special interests and the foreigners that want to make the deep state, the defense industrial complex, that want to make sure they all still get paid. They're the ones that want this war. The American people don't want this war. There's no farmer in the middle of Iowa who thinks his life is going to get better because we're airstriking mullahs. And we have a younger Khomeini now. So the mom living in Brooklyn's life is going to be better or something like that. They're not even attempting to make that case. They're just getting mad because these people with these podcasts, again, the Tucker Carlsons of the world, are free thinkers. They're not paid off by Fox News anymore, and they're not being controlled. They can just say what people are thinking, and again, the Mark Levins of the world, not used to that. So then this divide happens, and they go, oh, it's the doomers' fault. It's these darn podcasters. It's the woke Reich, these crap names that they come up with. But I will say, I've heard people like Dave Smith say the coalition's destroyed, that the right's destroyed. Nothing's going to work. The Democrats are going to win the midterms. And that's probably true. The Democrats will likely win the midterms. But the coalition's not destroyed. The coalition is not Trump's. The coalition being the 2024 coalition. Hispanic men, African American men, young people, the populists, right? That's not Donald Trump's movement. He does not own it. He's never running for election again. So if we can find a candidate, and it's probably not J.D. Vance, probably not Marco Rubio, it's probably like a Thomas Massie. If we can find a candidate like that can unite the right, and I think it'll be something like Donald Trump, but obviously without the personality Trump has. The response that I can already hear people saying is, the Fox News, Mark Levins will never get on board with a Thomas Massie, but they were never Trumpers, and they got on board with that. They got on board with the no new wars, and maybe they knew something we didn't. I've kind of made this claim on Ben Shapiro. Maybe they knew ahead of time he was going to betray his base and he was going to, go to war for Israel. Maybe they knew that. I don't know how. But I think these never Trumpers did get on board in 2024. And I think that another Republican candidate can emulate that, even after this big fracture. Because this fracture was here in 2024. There were still non-interventionists debating the interventionists. It wasn't this brutal, but the debate was there, the divide was there, and Donald Trump was able to bridge that. I think another candidate, a real populist this time, can bridge that gap again, or at least marginalize the deep state right, the interventionists, neocons, marginalize them enough to where the coalition can be put back together in a functional way. So I'm not all doom and gloom, actually. I think that we can put this back together and handle everything just right post Donald Trump. That being said, I think Democrats are going to win the midterms. I don't think we're going to put it back together here in 6 months, but in 2.5 years, I think we can actually do it. So let's talk about where this leaves the Middle East now. The Palestinians, other sympathetic Muslims like the Iranian government, they believe Israel is illegitimate and should be wiped off the map. No question. They are not going to stop pursuing that goal. That's something they feel very deeply about. The Israelis believe the land was promised to them by God, and they can take whatever they want. If they want to take 20% of southern Lebanon, that's part of Greater Israel. That's their thing. You could go back and listen to the Mike Huckabee tape where he's talking to Tucker Carlson, and he says, God promised the entire Middle East to Israel. That's what they really believe. And okay, that's what they want to. And you can see why it's easy for them to make that case to their people when they're constantly under attack all the time. That if you lived in Israel and your government told you, hey, all these missiles that are falling on you all the time, we could stop that all if we go and we annex all these countries, we take a bigger piece out of all of them, get this defensible space. You could see why that argument, you'd be open to it if you were Israeli. These people are just attacking you all the time. You were born in Israel. Again, it was the country was created 80 years ago. So you could see why people are open to that argument there. And so you've got this immovable object, unstoppable force. I don't see it getting better. This 2-week ceasefire isn't going to solve that problem, and Iran's the main driver of it. Yes, the Sunni Muslims are, more extreme. We pay off the Saudi Arabian government and the Egyptians and all those governments to keep their people under control, whereas it's fun. It's vice versa. The Sunnis in Saudi Arabia are the most radical, but since we pay off their government, they play nice with Israel. The Shiite Muslims, the ones in Iran, they're the ones that are not that radical. They're the more highly educated ones. The people there could get along with Israel just fine. But they have an extremist theocracy who wants to wipe Israel off the map. So those two things, we're not going to get them reconciled. We are still going to have wars in the Middle East until we are able to tell Israel, we're done. We're not fighting your wars anymore. You need to make a deal with these people to the extent that you can, or fight your own wars. We're done. We're not going to take orders from you anymore. We're not paying for you to level Gaza anymore. We're not spending $40 billion fighting a government that the United States has no interest fighting. We're not doing it anymore. The U.S. has gotten nothing from this war. Not one positive thing has come out of it for us. We, as Americans, are not any safer than we were 40 days ago. San Francisco was never going to be bombed by the Iranian government. They had no capacity to do that. They never did. They never were going to. They didn't have a nuclear weapon. They weren't even close to getting a nuclear weapon. But still, that's how it's sold to us. But now we have Americans dead. Our gas prices are up, 100% in some places. We've got, We spent all this money. $40 billion. We were told, again, just to put it in perspective, we were told we couldn't have a border wall to secure our country in 2016 because it would cost $25 billion, and that was too much. But now we've just here spent $40 billion on this exercise that's gotten our country nothing. You know how many problems we could solve in our country for $40 billion? A lot of them, actually. We could build a high-speed rail from San Francisco to maybe San Jose. Is that a poor example? Yeah, I got you. But we could build a whole ton of other shit, just not in California. We could build it for $40 billion. But instead, we've spent it getting Americans killed. We've spent it blowing up Iranian elementary schools, making the rest of the world hate us even more than they already do, destroying international commerce, all over what? We aren't going to gain anything. For all these people defending the war on Twitter or on Fox News or whatever, what have we gained? Nothing. Explain to me someone, or explain to your average person living in Florida. Let's say a farmer in Florida. How is their life better now that fertilizer costs twice as much? Now that fuel costs twice as much? Is that farmer supposed to be thankful and just feel better that the world's safer? Now it's not any safer. We still have an insane mullah running Iran. They still have their stockpile of enriched uranium. We didn't touch that. So what are we doing? We have gained nothing out of this, and now we're hoping to negotiate ourselves back to the status quo. We have fucked this up beyond recognition. And we should have seen it coming to begin with. We should have seen this whole thing coming. Because it has nothing, there was nothing in it for us to begin with. And there never was. This was always on behalf of Israel. There was not a single thing we could have gained. We should have left that region 20 years ago. We'd have a lot more Americans alive. We'd have a lot more money, a lot less debt, and we'd have a lot better standing in the world. It's time to get rid of the empire and go back to just being a republic. We can't afford it anymore. I don't know who's going to pay this $40 trillion. It's not going to be us. We can't afford it. Our leaders are just flushing our country down the toilet, completely sold us out, and there's nothing we can do about it. They're going to keep killing more Iranians over, I don't know what they think they're going to gain. Again, this whole thing, it's hard for us to see what there is to gain out of this because there is nothing for us to gain out of Americans. But again, this is where our interests diverge from Israel's. They want chaos in Iran. They're fine with the Libya method, a civil war where the entire country collapses, because then they're able to move into the rest of the Middle East and there's no counterbalance against them anymore. They can do whatever they want. They can exercise power however they feel free because they'll be the regional power if Iran collapses. The United States does not want Iran to collapse because then, again, they can shut down the Strait of Hormuz. It destroys a lot of the oil production there, which, there's a lot, and we want global oil prices cheap. Israel doesn't care about any of that stuff. Iran is an existential threat to them, and that's true. Like there is real reason for Israelis to want Iran to be completely defanged, and I get it. But that's not in America's interest, because what it takes to get there works against what the American people want. Again, cheap energy. We want free trade through the Strait of Hormuz. That's what Americans want. We can't afford $8 a gallon gas. Now, the Israelis, they're willing to put up with that, but we're not. So it's pretty clear who benefits from this. Only Israel does, not the United States. And so through that lens, then you can understand why this whole thing continues. The only question is why. Why do our leaders keep doing it to us? Why do they keep selling us out? I don't know. We could do 20 more episodes on conspiracies of what they've got on Donald Trump or his donors, on the influence of the Israel lobby, whatever. We could go on about this thing. But it's clear. There are no interests for the United States in this war. No, we have achieved nothing. And at the end of this, here's my prediction. We will end up with something near or slightly worse than the status quo after spending all this money, Americans being killed, wounded, after all this. And then the neocons will say, it's because we didn't commit to it. If we would have just been willing to put in ground troops, then we could have overthrown the mullahs, and then Iran would be a thriving democracy and everything would be great. But these damn Americans just wouldn't support us long enough. They just wouldn't give us that extra $1 billion we needed. And that extra, we just needed 20 more soldiers to go in, and then we could have overthrown the regime, and then everything would be great. They'd be they'd be the ancient Persians. This freedom-loving, well-educated, awesome people that you don't even have to go back to the ancient Persians. You could just say they would be the Persians of the 1950s. That's what they'll tell us. We were this close. It's like the memes everyone makes of the gambling addicts. Yeah, every gambling addict just quits right before they're about to hit it big. That's the neocons theory right there. If we could have just killed a few more civilians, if we could have just sent in a few more Americans to get killed, then this whole thing would have worked. But it was these damn American people that wouldn't get behind it. And that's what it was. We split the baby in half, and that's why this whole thing was a disaster. You should have listened to us to begin with. We should have gone all the way, and then it would have been great. Now ignore that we did it their way in Afghanistan for 20 years and Iraq. They will still tell you, actually, if you tell some of these neocons that Iraq was a disaster, Afghanistan will say, oh, it's because we didn't fully commit. If we would have actually just put 1 million troops right there in Afghanistan, we could have kept the Taliban out. They'd be a thriving democracy. There'd be women walking around in miniskirts, and gay men could kiss each other in public. That's what America stands for. That's what we could have had. But all these damn American people and these Gold Star families, they were tired of the boys getting killed, and so they just said that's enough. That they wanted to come home. They were tired. $8 trillion is all we spent. We just needed a little more, and the whole place would have been a thriving democracy. That's what they'll tell you. It's bullshit, of course. We should never be in any of these countries. And the people are sick and tired of it, and I'm glad. I'm glad that that is the new majority opinion, that these wars are stupid. I'm glad Donald Trump is paying a really heavy political price, because that's a great warning to the next president, that if you go do shit like this, you are destroying your presidency. You will destroy your party. You will not win in the midterms. That's really a great incentive structure for presidents to have. Stupid wars get you your ass kicked in elections. That happened to Joe Biden, and now it's going to happen to Donald Trump, and he deserves it. I hate to say it because I supported Donald Trump in 2024, but he's getting what he deserves, and it's too bad because there's going to be a lot of collateral damage. The people, the good Republicans don't deserve this. The people that are going to have to endure all sorts of insane shit under the Democrats don't deserve this. We're going to see a crackdown on the First Amendment. We're going to see a crackdown on the Second Amendment. We're going to see more racism institutionalized. That's DEI. Again, white people aren't going to be admitted to universities in the same proportion. They won't be able to get government grants in the same proportions they have. They're not going to be able to get the jobs that they want because there'll be racial quotas. I mean, we're going to get right back to what we were in pre-2016, and even worse. It was actually bad all through Donald Trump's years in a lot of the states. There were a lot of people our age who couldn't get into the university they wanted because they were white, and there was a mechanical racism against them. You were docked points for being white at schools like Harvard. They lost a Supreme Court case over this. If you were Asian or white, you were docked points off your application. That's the type of racism we're going to be enduring under the Democrats, because Donald Trump just couldn't stand up and tell Israel and the lobby here no. That's what we're going to have. And it's really unfortunate because the people don't deserve that. He was supposed to liberate us from all that shit, not bring it back to us, which he has done with this war. It has divided the right, and it's really going to cost us. So that's my 2 cents on the subject. It's tragic, man. It really is. The downfall of Donald Trump in this war, and watching him just tarnish his political legacy after the greatest political comeback in American history, man, does it hurt to see. It's really bad. But he betrayed his base, and so this is what he gets. And I don't know. I try to self-reflect and say, should we have seen through this? Did we? But no. His first term, no new wars. And that's what the people wanted. Now we can talk about 2020 and, if that's what the people wanted, why did he lose? We'll set that aside. What happened in 2020 for another time. There we go. The next episode, we're not going to talk much about Iran. We're going to get back to our regularly scheduled programming because it's depressing what it's done to our country for all those poor, I don't know if any women have been killed, but those men that have been killed, it's too bad. All right, we're out. See you next time, guys.